As you know, if you follow me on social media, when I have a guest on the podcast, we usually, take a few excerpts from the conversation to make some promotional videos and kind of promote the episode. The last time my guest was on the podcast, it was so hard to narrow down because we could have taken the whole 40-minute conversation and taken every single bit of it and added value. There was so much value in it that I did lift a lot of our conversation, put it in the Rising Leader handbook. But if I put the entire conversation in there, Garry would sue me for plagiarism for just stealing everything of him, because just the value, the caring, the wisdom, the experience that Garry Ridge brings to a conversation is unmatched. Now, formally, Garry Ridge is a purpose-driven founder, board member, advisor, professor, and global keynote speaker with over 35 years experience leading and transforming global businesses. As chairman and CEO of WD40 Company for 25 years, Garry grew the brand into one of the world's most trusted and beloved names, earning recognition as one of Inc. magazine's world top 10 CEOs. Besides being known as the culture coach, Garry is an adjunct professor at the University of San Diego in the Masters of Science Executive Leadership Program. Thank God he's teaching this to people. He is the author of Any Dumbass Can Do It, Learning Moments from an Everyday CEO at a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Company, which should be out when you're listening to this conversation. Garry, thank you for being here.
G'day, Mark. It's just a delight to be with you. Thank you for inviting me back again.
Oh, thank you for sending your book ahead of publication, because it just brought back everything that we talked about on the last time you were on the conversation, and all the other podcasts I listened to you on, and all the videos that are on LinkedIn and the wisdom that you share. The thing that stands out for me, besides the fact that a lot of people talk a good game. They talk about caring about people. They talk about leading a certain way, and then I find out they're different. That's the best of them. What they put in their book, what they put in the video, is the best of them. And what I've learned, everything about you, is you grew this philosophy from the ground up for yourself, right? Would you say?
Yeah, I certainly had an awareness moment of what I thought was important, no doubt about it.
Well, you open the book with being on the plane on the way to Australia and reading the Dalai Lama. You want to share it? You want to share that one?
Oh yeah, that was well, as you do, when you're flying, you take stuff to read, and I was 38,000 feet somewhere over the South Pacific Ocean in, I think it was 1998, 1999. I'd only been CEO for a little while, and I read a quote from the Dalai Lama. It said, "Our purpose in life is to make people happy. If you can't make them happy, at least don't hurt them." And I thought, wow, that's a concept for business. Not that I saw we were hurting people at our company, but I saw a lot of hurt around me. A bit like the hurt that's around right now, where we're hurting right now from rapid change, and we have to deal with that. And that was kind of the trigger that got me thinking about it. And then as we were coming into land in Sydney, the wheels were down, and I read another quote from Aristotle, and it said, "Pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work." And I thought that makes sense. How do I put all that together? And then when I got back to San Diego, I read about a master's degree at USD, and I went to hear my dear, dear friend, Dr. Ken Blanchard. I didn't know him then, but he's now my dear, dear friend. He wrote the foreword to my book. And he said, most MBA programs get people in the head. We got to start getting people in the heart. And I went, okay, I'm going back to school. I got to go know more of this. So here I am, the CEO of a US public company. I went back to school, and I soaked it all in, and I spat it all out. And that was the catalyst of the wonderful culture that I ignited at WD40, or I planted the seed, and now many people are sitting under that big tree enjoying it. So it's so good.
How did you inspire that? Because you talk in the book, you talk the difference between motivating people and inspiring people. How did you take like WD40 is such an ironic company, because it fixes squeaks, and meanwhile it's one of the best companies in the world to work for. How did you
Yeah.
inspire that and get people on board with the way you wanted to run a company?
Well, firstly, it was about, and I talk about it in the book, your product is not your purpose. And our what was our purpose? Why were we going to get up every day? And we discovered, through conversation and inclusion, that what we really did was create positive, lasting memories. Because, I'd talk to people and what do you do? I work for WD-40. I remember when, I remember when. And we said, well, if we create these positive, lasting memories for our end users, then why shouldn't all our constituents be seen like that? So positive, lasting memories from the people that were in our tribe, positive, lasting memories for the communities that we lived in. So first, you've got to have a clearly defined, authentic purpose. I often say, imagine a place where you go to work every day, you make a contribution to something bigger than yourself, you learn something new, you're protected and set free by a compelling set of values, and you go home happy. The first part of it is making a difference to something bigger than yourself. So it was that, then values, and then reducing fear in the organization. And then you have to do it over and over and over again. A friend of mine is Charlie Maloof. He owns a chain of Ashley furniture stores out in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. And I was chatting to him one day and he said, Garry, culture is not a microwavable event. It takes a crock pot approach. And he's so true. This is simple. It's not easy. And time is not your friend in building great cultures in an organization. So the answer to your question is clarity and consistency.
But let's be very specific again with WD-40. Uh, how do you get people inspired for something big? What's bigger than yourself at a company like that? Like when you look at the product, how do you create something for people to believe in?
Um, Creating a place where people are safe. That's bigger than the brand. I remember going through COVID. Um, halfway through, we did a pulse survey to just make sure we weren't draining cultural equity. And one of the results that came back that was higher than before COVID, and I didn't believe it when I first read it, was I feel safe and confident about my place in the company's future. And that number actually went up. And I said, I don't believe it. We
Hmm.
were in COVID. It's January 2021. The world has not told us yet that it's not ending yet. And everybody feels excited about being here. And we went back and asked why. And Mark, they told us because I feel safe. If I'm going to be anywhere, I want to be here. We are living our just cause. And our just cause was a group of people that come together to protect and feed each other. We were a place where no matter what was going on in your life at home, you could come to WD-40, to our tribe, and you would know and feel like you belonged. You would know and feel like you matter. And you would know that you could make choices that showed your value.
Hmm.
Um,
And you called it the recombobulation zone for creating
yes.
stability in the book, which I thought was hilarious. First of all, where'd you get that analogy from?
I was going through an airport. And as I talk about in the book, you go to an airport and you get discombobulated as you go through security, right? Where's my shoes? Where's my belt? And then I went on the other side. I had this area there said a recombobulation zone. In other words, this is where you put yourself back together. And I thought, this is so true. This is life. We get discombobulated, and sometimes we got to go to that place to recombobulate, to take time to sit back and just say, I'm going to put my pieces back together again. And again, that's so important today. As we just talked about, I mentioned earlier, and we talked about it before, is that this rapid change going on right now, and we've got to take time to step back and just have that opportunity to recombobulate.
Hmm.
Because if we don't, it'll overwhelm us. And I may have said this when we were together before, but I think it's even truer now than ever before. We are just these basic human beings bumbling our way down this pathway of life. And there are these thieves in the bushes that run out and grab us and take us into the bush. And for a moment, we kind of feel okay. And then we realize we're not supposed to be there. So we need to get out of that bush and back on that path, because we will never get where we intended to go, to our destiny if we don't get back there. And the world today is a bit like that. Every day, some thief is pulling us off our path, taking us into a dark place. Whether we agree with what's going on or not, it's still discombobulating. So we have to make ourselves aware of that, center ourselves, get back on our path, take a deep breath. Life's a gift. Don't send it back unwrapped. Let's continue to walk down that path because we know where we want to go.
And how do you do that? How do you be there for your people when the perceive, like I believe like allostatic, our allostatic load is up to here. And I define allostatic load as that kind of that state of amount of stress that we have in our body at any given time. And every little stressor just adds to it. And I think we're all kind of up to our chin in allostatic load so that anything could knock us off our game. And I think, I believe that leaders need to be there for their people in ways in ways like they should have always been, but even more now. How do you coach your people into being that safe place?
Again, I think it's awareness. I think you have to really be very, very aware of what your state is at the time. I being the dean of dumbassery, which I am, I need all the help I can get. And as you know, I have a silly little note thing on my notepad and also on my computer that I read. I don't know how many times I've read it already today, but it says, "Am I being the person I want to be right now? And who is that person?" And you as a leader cannot give your leftovers to those that you have the privilege to lead. And I might be in a meeting or some sort of interaction with you, Mark, and I might leave there and I've given a lot to you, but I have to take a moment to restore myself because if I'm now going to interact with someone else, they don't deserve my leftovers.
Mm.
They need my full plate. So I think it's awareness, intention. This leadership thing, it's not easy. It's very rewarding, but it's not easy. A lot of people think, as you know, it's the soft stuff. It's far from soft. It's about consistency, awareness, being deliberate, understanding very clearly what your drivers are. My purpose now that I'm, not doing what I used to do full time, is I help leaders build cultures of belonging where love, forgiveness, and learning inspire a happier, more connected world. And that was one of the main drivers behind my book because I believe, I strongly believe, that business has the opportunity to make the world a better place. And they have a responsibility. And the reason is we touch more people every day in business than just about anything else. But if you look at the 2025 Gallup workplace analytics that just came out, employee engagement in the US has dropped to 31%, the lowest in a decade. Now, that was in January. I'm scared to think what it is right now because
Mhm.
I don't think it's even that. The most significant drop is among employees under 35, which is highlighting a growing trend of detachment. And detachment is happening because we've forced ourselves to be apart. There's a pandemic of loneliness in this world right now. So as leaders, bring people together, encourage them, embrace them. Let's have that conversation. Um, I was on a podcast a few weeks ago with a lady by the name of Ashley Virtue from the National Conflict Resolution Council, and they specialize in training people around conflict resolution. And she said one of the challenges we have in society right now is we're not having those micro conflicts that we used to have before. So we're losing the skill of being able to deal with conflict.
Mm.
you know, we'd have a micro conflict. You and I would be at the water cooler, and I'd jump in front of you. A micro conflict.
Right.
But where our muscle, our conflict muscle, is weakening, so we're now withdrawing, and now we're isolating ourselves. We're putting ourselves into self-inflicted solitary confinement, and that's not going to do any of us any good.
It's such a nuanced conversation when we talk about remote work and being back in the office. And it seems like it's a binary, like it's a heavy hand, you must be back in the office. And no, we are productive when we're not in the office, but I work in private equity and in finance quite a bit, and it's such an apprentice type environment where you just need to be in the office to learn to move forward. And during COVID, it was horrible. And even now, like people want to stay home, but they're missing not only those little conflicts, but they're just missing the little learnings, the little connections, the little, like impromptu. Let's go into this office and whiteboard this, that kind of thing. And
So powerful and so important. I was thinking back, my daughter in Australia is a dance teacher. And she says, Dad, you never put a dancer on Broadway unless you've watched them dance off Broadway. And when she said that to me, I said, that is so true. When I think about people, when I was in my role at WD-40, I wanted to see them perform to understand what their leadership style was.
mm,
So, I'd have them in meeting rooms and I'd like say, Mark is a high potential. I think, Mark, we've agreed that he's got opportunity to be a better leader and help build better teams into the future. But so I would bring you in and I would bring you in and have you part of something and I'd observe you. And if you weren't behaving in a way that, was someone that could build a highly engaged team, we'd either have to coach you or decide you weren't where you wanted to be. But I would feel at risk putting someone, giving someone the responsibility of being a high performing coach if I hadn't seen them play. I mean, I would be putting that whole team at risk. So, yeah, I agree with you. There's lots that can be done without being together, but there's lots to be gained by being together.
100%. So the question I have, given the environment, given kind of, it kind of feels like whiplash of how we're seeing leadership, how we're seeing success, who we're kind of giving kudos to and attention to these days, and kind of moving away from the things that you've talked about for years, the things that I talk about, this heart-centered leadership, this we care about our people, to it's almost like the A.D.s, like it's profit and we got to be pragmatic at this time. How are you seeing the headwinds and the adoption of the principles that you just live, eat, and breathe?
Well, this is the twist on that is that if our overall objective is to have highly performing organizations that deliver value to our shareholders, right? Then how do you do that? Well, number one is you need to have a well-defined strategic plan and business plan, right? So you and I could write that up. Here's our business plan, here's our strategic plan. Good job, Mark. We've identified the core end user, path to market. We've got all the structure underneath, blah, 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 blah. Perfect. But if you have low will of the people, so if only 30% of the people in the organization are buying into and supporting and enthusiastically executing against this wonderful, wonderful plan we put together, 30 times something is something. But if 80% of the people are, 80 times something is more. So I think where leaders get it wrong is, and some of this is caused by this, push for short-term results. I want, what are you going to do for me for the next 90 days? Well, I'm not here for 90-day intervals. I'm here to build an enduring company over time that delivers. And that's what we did at WD-40. We had a compounded annual growth rate of total shareholder return of 15% a year. We took the market cap from 300 million to 3.6 billion. How? We had a good strategic plan, but we had 93% employee engagement. 98% of our people said they loved to work at the company, and 97% said they respected their coach, who was their boss. And most people leave organizations because they hate their boss. Why did we have those high scores? It's very simple. People know, felt, and were treated like they belong. People know, felt, and knew that they matter. And people had psychological safety. We took fear out with the learning moment. and people can make choices. It's not rocket science. But people, and that's why I called the book Any Dumbass Can Do It. Because if you know the ingredients, I can do it. I didn't do it on my own. I used to introduce myself as G'day, I'm Garry Ridge. I'm the chairman and CEO of WD40 Company. I'm consciously incompetent, probably wrong and roughly right, and I need all the help I can get. And when you ask for help and you treat people with respect and dignity, guess what? You get help. Thank you for those that helped me.
Absolutely. So quickly, that learning moment thing was, creating safety with the learning moment. It's even in the title of your book, but it's about embracing failure. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the definition of a learning moment is a positive or negative outcome of any situation that needs to be openly and freely shared to benefit all people. Now, if we take this to the practical world, right? And WD-40 came from learning moments. If people don't know the story, back in 1953, there was a little fledgling company in San Diego called Rocket Chemical Company. There was a problem with condensation and corrosion in the umbilical cord of the Atlas space rocket. A couple of chemists got together and started to gin up formulas to solve the problem. Formula One didn't work, nor did 25 or 37. 39 didn't work, but 40 did. We had 39 learning moments before WD water displacement 40th formula was born. I'm so happy they didn't give up at 39. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today.
Right.
I'm actually glad 39 didn't work too, Mark, by the way, because I don't think WD-39 sounds anything as good as WD-40. But I was chatting with someone earlier. In anything you look at, success is based on learning, except a lot of people call it failure. You watch the best baseball batters in the world, they get 1,000 balls and hit 300 and they're a hero. So, we need to make sure that we embrace the fact that we know that everything's not going to work. Let's not hide it. In most organizations, people don't lie, they fake and hide. I talk about that in the book. Candor is about no lying, no faking, no hiding. Most people don't lie, they fake and hide. Why do they fake and hide? Because of fear. And we create fear. And, it's Alec, the soul sucking CEO, who I talk about in the book, who, and I think he's here somewhere. I did have him here earlier. Yeah, he's, uh, he's here. This is Alec.
All right, we're gonna have to get Alec in a video clip somewhere.
This is Alec, the soul-sucking CEO of Fear Inc. Or it could be Alice. And when you think about Alec, his ego eats his empathy instead of his empathy eating his ego. He's a micromanager. He thinks he's corporate royalty, loves a fear-based culture, is a master of control, is a know-it-all, doesn't value learning, must always be right, has all the answers, even the wrong ones, hates feedback, and doesn't keep their commitments. They're always talking about, if I was there, I would have done it differently, or blah, blah, blah. So, it's this sort of behavior. But if we really want to build an organization that has servant leadership engaged in it, great leaders love and involve their people. They're always in servant leadership mode. They're expected to be competent, so they're always learning. They're connected with emotional intelligence. The first chapter of my book is Are You Okay? Um, I talk in the book about, when I was traveling around in the Great Recession, people were asking, Are you okay, Garry? Are you okay? They weren't asking me if I was okay. They were asking us, Were we okay? It's about
Mhm.
us. You know, and great servant leaders are not a soft touch. They have a heart of gold and a backbone of steel. A lot of people think that great cultures is popcorn, pizza, and margarita parties. Yeah, it's not that at all. We're here to build a great organization that delivers. We're champions of hope, and that's so important. Let's not give up on hope. The world is a wonderful place. Life is a gift. We're not going to send it back unwrapped. We're just going to unwrap it a little differently in the next few years. That's so important. So, there's all these elements that we have to think about. And as I said, a lot of them, as you know, I chat about and my life experiences in Any Dumbass.
I'm curious. A lot of my business comes from coaching the uncoachable. I've made an entire business of being called in for people who are basically a bull in a china closet, or they're really good at what they do, but they just haven't hone those leadership skills or that emotional intelligence or the the maturity, and I help with that. When you run across leaders who aren't living and eating and breathing these virtues that you talk about, how much personal work do you support people to do and expect people to do in order to be able to be the person who can show up their best? Because
Oh,
most of us, when we're in fight or flight, when we're triggered, we can't be a good leader. We have to work on those things in order to show up in that way.
oh, 100%. I coach 7 CEOs right now, 3 public company CEOs, 4 private company CEOs. And the first phase of my coaching process is awareness. Is and I actually use the work of Marshall Goldsmith. His great book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, has these behaviors that are normally embedded in their daily behavior. And we go through that. We say, are you aware of your behavior and how it's affecting other people? And candidly, a lot of people aren't aware that
Mm-mm.
their crappy behavior is creating this. So the first part is awareness. Then the second part is intention. Once we discover what are the areas of leadership that we want to either turn up and turn down the volume on, it's now about discipline. And I have them ask themselves questions on a daily basis. Did I do my best to be a better leader, not to be a micromanager, whatever it is? And we interact with their peer group, and we ask the peer group to help that person get better as well. And if they do that, they change.
Mm-hmm.
They absolutely change.
The more
But a lot
I
of it,
find the 360, having a 360 review process and just having that undeniable feedback does 90% of the lifting because they
yeah,
just weren't aware.
yeah. Well, I do a heat map because it's quite interesting. I ask them where they think their opportunities are, and we
Mhm.
heat map it. Then I heat map the responses I get from their stakeholders, and it's like, oh, I see. And honestly, the cluster of the stakeholder feedback is very close around the same things.
Mhm.
So, it's like it's not he's just being a bad listener to Mark, that's bad listener to Fred and John as well.
Nice. So let's just go back to current times now. What are you suggesting for people so that they can show up their best, so that they can replenish themselves and really be find that equanimity during these uncertain times?
Um, be deliberate, you know. I love to ask myself the question, and it comes from the book Out of the Maze, which was a follow on from Who Moved My Cheese. Why do I believe what I believe? And, we hear a lot and we tend to believe it. And as um, Brené Brown says, in the absence of understanding or facts and data, we make up stories, and those stories become our truth. And one of the things that I've observed in the past weeks is people taking little bits of stuff and making up stories. Well, this is happening, so this is going to happen, so this is going to be bad. Well, I'm not sure that's true. We might want to let it play out a little bit first before we jump to the conclusion and then bury ourselves in this, you know, mire of, doom and gloom, or it may be excitement and whatever. So I think be deliberate, ask yourself why you're believing what you're believing. Are you gathering the facts? Are you verifying what you believe to be true? And fall back on your values. What do you stand for?
Mhm.
And live them out, because as most things, this too will pass. But if there's something that we want to stand for, we need to stand for it in a respectful, meaningful way.
Mhm. So what would you like people pick up your book, they read it, they put it down. What do you hope How do you hope it changes them?
I hope it um, makes them aware of the fact that culture is a competitive advantage. Servant leadership is the key to longevity in an organization. And success is simple but not easy. But if you understand what you need to do and you're prepared to do it consistently, you can change you can significantly change the environment you're in. And every little change will make a change to the world. So we can make the world a happier place. And interestingly enough, if people want to test themselves, on my website now, I've actually have the dumbass quiz. So www.thelearningmoment.net, up on the top banner, it says the quiz. Go in and take the Master Your Dumbassery quiz. You'll get a grade back on where you are, and then you'll get a playbook from me that says, here are the 4 or 5 things that you can start doing right away to change the culture in your organization or change the behavior in your life if you want.
I like that. I'm going to put the link in. We'll put the link in the show notes. But I'm going to go take that, and I want to know. I want to see how I fare. Uh, this is going to be a book that I give away. The way I give away The Coaching Habit or Radical Candor. The way you put the chapters together is just such an easy book to walk away with value. Really well done. I'm really appreciative that I was waiting for you to do something like this. So I'm so excited. Last question. And it's been one I've been asking all of 2025. And you're such a wise, loving person. What do you know about life, about the world, about anything? What do you know that you really wish everybody would know?
Oh, life's a gift. Don't send it back unwrapped.
Knew you would go charming on me. I appreciate that so much. People want to find you. They'll go to your website. You're all over LinkedIn, right? We'll put
Yes.
all that in the show notes. And what date is the book coming out?
March 11th.
March 11th. I think this episode is going to come out the day after your book's out. So go buy the book. And Garry, thank you for coming back and spending time with us.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for what you're doing to make the world a better place. But we need to get more of us all together because we can make a difference. So thank you.
Appreciate it. To everybody else, thank you for hanging out while I fanboy and be effusive to one of my favorite people on the face of the planet. This job of podcasting is so much fun because I get to talk to people who I admire. It's really wonderful. For the rest of you, really take care of yourself. I love you a ton. Have a great rest of the day.